Trump wants lower interest rates, and he's done everything short of physically removing Jerome Powell from his chair to get them. Threats, investigations, public humiliation. None of it worked. So he stopped fighting and found someone who would hand him what he wanted voluntarily. But it's not just lower interest rates, it's much, much more. Kevin Warsh's nomination to head the Fed has consequences for your savings, your mortgage, and every dollar you hold. Because what's being quietly restructured isn't just who runs the Fed. It's the agreement that has fought inflation for 75 years. And once you understand what Trump actually won with this nomination, you'll understand what it means for your money. In time to do something about it. Let's start with the puzzle, because on the surface, this nomination doesn't make total sense. Trump has spent his entire second term demanding lower interest rates. He's called Powell an enemy of the country. He's accused him of playing politics. His entire economic argument, cheaper borrowing, faster growth, depends on rates coming down fast. So who does he pick to replace Powell? Kevin Warsh, a man who spent his career warning that the Fed was too loose with money, a man who argued against lower rates when most of his colleagues were still comfortable with them, a man who, on the day after Lehman Brothers collapsed in 2008, was already sounding the alarm about inflation. He has softened his stance lately. He's argued that AI-driven productivity gains may justify looser policy without sparking inflation, even as many of his soon-to-be colleagues at the Fed remain skeptical of that. But it seems somewhat counterintuitive that a White House wanting aggressive rate cuts would settle on a nominee with a mixed past when it comes to lowering rates. Certainly, there were candidates available with a stronger, more consistent belief in the benefits of cutting rates. So what's actually going on? The financial press landed on an obvious answer quickly. Kevin Warsh is married to Jane Lauder, granddaughter of Estee Lauder, heir to one of the largest cosmetics fortunes in the world. Her father, Ronald Lauder, has known Trump since college, and he's a big supporter and large benefactor of the president. The family connection is real, but you don't hand the keys to a $31 trillion economy to someone because his father-in-law is a buddy. That's a tabloid story. There has to be more to this pick than meets the eye. And there is. But to see it, you have to go back 80 years. Consider someone like Dan. He's a project manager in his mid-40s, a solid career, a retirement account he's been building for 15 years. He doesn't track Fed policy closely. He doesn't need to. He trusts that the system more or less holds, that the people in charge of monetary policy are making decisions based on the economy, not on what the White House needs to look good. That trust is the thing that's about to be tested. Because what Walsh is proposing isn't a change in interest rates. It's a change in who actually controls the most powerful financial levers in the country. And once you understand the historical blueprint he's working from, the stakes become very clear. In April 1942, the United States Treasury approached the Federal Reserve with a request. America was entering World War II. The government needed to borrow enormous sums to fund the war effort, and it needed to borrow cheaply. The Fed agreed. It formally pegged short-term rates at 0.3% and capped long-term bond yields at 2.5%. The arrangement was simple. Whatever bonds the public wouldn't buy at those capped rates, the Fed would. It printed money and bought government debt to hold the ceiling in place. The Fed had, in effect, become an arm of the Treasury. It was no longer setting monetary policy. It was executing fiscal policy on the government's behalf. For a few years, it was manageable. But by the late 1940s, with the war over and the economy running hot, the Fed couldn't raise rates to cool things down. It needed Treasury's permission, and the Treasury kept saying no. Finally, inflation rose to over 20%. The Fed had seen enough. It refused to keep buying bonds in the face of crushing inflation. On March 4th, the Fed and Treasury announced an agreement that re-established the Fed's independence. It would no longer take orders from the Treasury. That document, the Treasury-Federal Reserve Accord of 1951, is the foundation of the modern independent Federal Reserve. For 75 years, it's been the reason the Fed conducts monetary policy based solely on economic data, not on what the White House wants. Kevin Warsh wants to rewrite it. Not dramatically, not in a way that makes headlines the day it happens. That's what makes it so significant. Walsh has publicly signaled support for a modernized version of the 1951 Accord, a new agreement between the Fed and Treasury that would redefine when and how the Fed uses its most powerful tool, the balance sheet. Here's the distinction, and it matters enormously. Interest rates get all the attention, but the Fed's balance sheet is where the real power sits. It's how the Fed controls how much money is in the economy. The Fed prints money and buys bonds. More money enters the economy. Lending, economic activity, and often inflation pick up. The Fed sells. Money comes out of the economy. Lending slows. Economic activity cools. One analyst heard Walsh's proposal and said it looks more like a framework for the Fed to wield monetary policy on behalf of the government, not the economy. Exactly what the 1951 Accord sought to eliminate. Another analyst read it immediately for what it is: the Fed giving the Treasury Secretary a soft veto over the Fed's bond buying decisions. And the Treasury Secretary works for the President. Follow that chain one more link. What we're describing isn't an abstract institutional reshuffling. It's a change in who the Fed is ultimately accountable to when it decides how to conduct monetary policy. The Fed's entire credibility as an inflation fighter rests on one belief: that it execute monetary policy, adjust rates and the money supply, based solely on what is best for the economy, independent of who is in the White House. The moment investors worldwide begin to doubt that independence, even slightly, the math changes. Investors demand higher returns to compensate for the risk that the Fed might inflate away the debt. Long-term bond yields rise, the dollar weakens, and inflation expectations, once they start climbing, are extraordinarily difficult to bring back down. Dan's retirement account doesn't benefit from any of that. Refinancing his mortgage gets more expensive. The groceries that already strain his budget get pushed further out of reach. The scenario plays out gradually, then suddenly, which is exactly how it played out between 1942 and 1951, the last time this arrangement was tried. But here's what makes the Walsh nomination more than just a policy debate. It's a structural play, and Trump is closer to completing it than most people realize. The Fed's policy decisions are made by 12 voters. The 7 members of the Board of Governors, which includes the Fed chairman, another 4 regional Federal Reserve presidents on a rotating basis, and the president of the New York Federal Reserve. Trump, even after appointing Walsh, will have appointed only 3 of the 7 members of the Board of Governors. Trump has tried to remove another member of the Board of Governors. That case is before the Supreme Court. If Trump is successful, he will have a majority of the Board of Governors. But either way, appointing the chairman is powerful. In practice, no Fed chair has ever been outvoted in the institution's history. The chair sets the agenda, shapes the consensus, and negotiates the outcome before the vote ever happens. This isn't about rate cuts, it's about control. So what does this mean for your money, concretely? In the short term, Walsh will likely push rates modestly lower. Analysts at Wells Fargo believe close to 3%, probably 2 quarter-point cuts in 2026. That's not the dramatic easing Trump was demanding from Powell. It's measured. It's the kind of thing Walsh can defend publicly as economically justified. The structural shift is the part that matters over time. If the Treasury gains formal influence over the Fed's bond-buying decisions, the separation between monetary policy and government spending begins to blur. Investors who hold U.S. assets, treasuries, dollar-denominated bonds, dollar-based retirement accounts, hold them in part on the belief in the Fed's independence. The moment that premise weakens, money starts looking for exits. As one portfolio manager put it plainly, people will figure this out and over time take their money elsewhere. That's not a prediction. It's a description of what's happened every time in history when a central bank's independence has come into question. Here's the thing about Trump's strategy that makes it genuinely different from everything he tried before. Threatening to fire Powell created headlines, legal fights, and institutional resistance. Investigating Powell produced nothing but noise. Every aggressive move Trump made against the Fed's independence made the Fed dig in harder because the fight was public and the stakes were visible. Walsh doesn't require a fight. He's proposing a handshake, a voluntary restructuring dressed in the language of modernizing an outdated agreement, a new accord, a framework for closer cooperation. The language is procedural. The effect is structural. The implications are historic. And handshakes are much harder to challenge in court than firings. That's the real reason Trump picked Kevin Warsh. Not the family connection, not the AI productivity argument. The real reason is that Walsh has signaled he will voluntarily negotiate the kind of relationship between the Fed and the White House that Trump spent 2 years trying to force and couldn't. Control. For 75 years, the agreement that has governed the Fed's independence has held. What's being proposed now is its quiet replacement. Dan's retirement account is priced, assuming the old agreement is still in place. The question worth sitting with is, what happens to it if it isn't? Drop a comment below. Do you think Fed independence holds, or does this nomination change the game? I read every comment. If this changed how you think about how the Fed may operate, hit subscribe. We publish fresh content several times a week to help you protect and grow your wealth. And none of this is personal financial advice. This is education so you can build your own plan. Next, watch, is the US planning a $37 trillion crypto debt reset? It's on the screen. In the description, you'll find some useful links. 10% off Seeking Alpha products, including Alpha Picks, which has crushed the S&P since 2022. A link to my free Wealth Builders Blueprint, a comprehensive list of tools, courses, platforms, and other resources, many of which are completely free. And a link to Zacks Confidential, a stock recommendation service with dual money-back guarantees. Check them out. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.